Hello, this is Jim Morentz of the XchangeCore community. Today we're going to take a look at new projects, 3 new projects that extend XchangeCore and deliver to the whole XchangeCore community some valuable improvements as well as great experience in these new projects. These projects include the Regional Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience Project. We'll be building a toolbox for decision-making support in risk-based cross-sector analysis, and that's being done by the Bay Area Center for Regional Disaster Resilience. The Defense Industrial Base Human Resource Resiliency through two-way location-based information. We'll hear from the Defense Industrial Base Information Sharing and Analysis Center. And then finally, the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program has funded XchangeCore geospatial extensions through the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute and the California Earthquake Clearinghouse, and we'll be hearing about that. So let's turn first to the Regional Critical Infrastructure Risk Toolbox. Paula?
One of the biggest challenges we have faced is how you assess risk across sectors, across jurisdictions in a region. And why this is so important is you cannot have security and resilience for infrastructure assets unless you have regional resilience and vice versa. So this is looking at all hazards. Some of the biggest impediments that we have faced has been in the area of not being able to exchange information. That's very challenging because for organizations, particularly infrastructures, this is proprietary and sensitive information that can be used for nefarious purposes. Another impediment that we have found is that organizations have different ways of assessing risk. There isn't any standardized way to do it. So the bottom line here, that a few years ago we were asked, we being the National of Building Sciences, was asked to put a team together to look at what were these impediments, how did we need to proceed to come up with a process for regional risk assessment and management. So on that team was myself and Dr. Jerry Brashear for the Institute. We completed the study and we found, not surprisingly, that the 3 major impediments was the lack of any standardized approach across sectors and jurisdictions, and a lack of the analysis tools that could focus on interdependencies that could be used at the local level. There certainly are interdependencies models at the national level, but they're for use by government officials, and they're highly complex. But then the third major constraint, impediment, was that lack of a cross-sector information sharing system with mechanisms and protocols, the security safeguards built in that would enable participants, it could be in a sector, it could be in other groups, it could be a local government, to be able to share information, to overlay data, to develop the analytic products, and then disseminate those products to those decision makers who needed to make very important decisions for response, recovery, and particularly looking at mitigation needs. And that today is an extremely pressing need because of climate change, extreme events, and sea level rise. So looking at where you need to put investments, and some of these investments for infrastructure, rebuilding, upgrades, are going to be very expensive. So you need to have a way to prioritize those investments. The Toolbox project grew out of that National Institute of Building Sciences project. We put in a proposal for the competition, and I'd like to really commend DHSIP for this competition. My understanding, this is the first time that funds have gone directly to public-private partnerships and to private sector organizations like utilities to do this type of work that we're talking about here, focused on regional resilience and security. So our Toolbox project is basically to develop that risk management process using, in this case, the Bay Area as our test bed, San Francisco Bay Area. San Francisco Bay Area has, well, the UASI region for the Bay Area is 12 counties, and it is millions of people. It is over 100 cities and 400 special districts. So it's a very large metropolitan area and of course highly fragmented. So how do we develop the capabilities with this toolbox to look across that whole region? So the risk management process is the first outcome, and built into that we're going to have a decision-making system, a prioritization system. And underpinning all this is that all-important information sharing system. And so Jim, can go to the last slide there. So what this toolbox will include as an 18-month project is, in the end, our stakeholder validated risk management process. We have a core team of 13 organizations that is working on that include universities, other research organizations, a major water system that serves the South Bay, that San Jose water system, and Silicon Valley will be a major focus. We're going to have some also fuel distributors and other support providers for water systems involved in this, and then a large cross-sector multi-jurisdiction stakeholder group, which is going to be providing guidance and direction to the project and do the final validation. That customizable cross-sector information sharing system is going to be the key to all this. And I can't explain to you how I had this eureka moment, and this was a year ago, when Ann Rosinski of the California Clearinghouse, whom you're going to hear from very shortly, met with me and told me about XchangeCore, and suddenly I realized there was the mechanism that could expand on what was already developed and build this system. And the system, again, which is going to take XchangeCore from where it is now and add a lot of other useful capabilities, is going to provide users a way to access data, share data, overlay different types of data, and there will be ways, we'll have protocols which will lay out how members are going to be incorporated into the system. There will be guidelines for that, and we'll have examples of analytical products that can, and other products that can be generated through this system. So I'd like Jim Marantz, if you could say a few words about how this is all going to work.
Sure, Paula, thank you. The combination of XchangeCore and Sabre, XchangeCore being the technology, Sabre being the organization which focuses on private sector information exchange. It's depicted here as private sector operation status. The first one we're going to be using is San Jose Water Authority. And their mission is to be able to respond to leaks that occur in their water system. But in a major earthquake, their capacity will be exceeded. So the traditional Sabre XchangeCore, blue on the left-hand side, ability to accumulate information, turn it into NEEM-compliant standardized data, and then push it out to other organizations, will have the focus in this water exchange in the following way. On the left-hand side, the San Jose Water Operations Center tracks leaks. Standard system. They do it absolutely every day. What they don't do is tell anybody else about it. So XchangeCore and Sabre will be the way in which those leaks get accumulated in their routine maintenance system, get exported out of that through XchangeCore, and then go out to other organizations. You've seen in the past that can go out to mobile apps, go out to WebUC and ArcGIS Online and others, and other organizations can then make use of that information. The health people will know that they have leaks nearby. The geological survey people will be able to say, gee, if there's a leak there, there probably is earth movement there. I should send people out to look at that earth movement. So everybody has other reasons for looking at those leaks. But it's the impacted and support organizations in the upper right-hand corner who will be receiving the leak information in order to do something about it. And they're going to receive information that comes out of XchangeCore, goes into CalWarn, which is part of iInfo, a very widespread application that shares information and does a whole lot of other application tools that focuses largely on the metropolitan government area. In fact, it is created by an organization that was founded by Texas metropolitan governments, and they make this information available and the applications available very inexpensively to other local governments. What happens then for local government water companies that are getting that information from San Jose through XchangeCore into CalWarn and iInfo, what they then will do is, using iInfo, be able to say, hey, these 6 leaks, I'm sending 2 teams out and we're going to take care of these 6 leaks. That goes back to San Jose Water. They can then verify that those people are showing up and take those as requirements for repair off of the list. They get removed from XchangeCore. When it populates out, the other organizations that would be helpful supporting organizations no longer see those and can focus on the leaks that exist. So it's going to be a highly operational system that is going to support San Jose Water, and by virtue of that, San Jose Water being a leader in the whole Bay Area water applications, going to be able to push this out throughout the Bay Area and create a network of resource support to water leaks in emergencies, which will benefit everyone. That is the picture of how XchangeCore is going to be the sharing component of the toolbox. So let me just bring you the information here on Paula. And any final comments, Paula?
No, that was great, Jim. Again, I really appreciate the fact that we can utilize Sabre XchangeCore for this system, which it would not have been possible, the pilot project, to really do what we wanted to accomplish.
Well, we are excited to be participating with you, and when I say we, it's the whole XchangeCore community, because everybody will be called upon to support with ideas and will benefit from the improvements that your project will make in XchangeCore. So thank you, Paula. All right, let's move on. Steve Lines, Chad Tillman of the DIB ISAC, Defense Industrial Base Information Sharing and Analysis Center.
Thanks, Jim. Chad, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. A little bit of background. Defense Industrial Base Information Sharing and Analysis Center was set up actually back in 2011. It's been working with the National Council of ISACs for quite a while. The first concept of that was back in 2007. It is part of the Information Sharing and Analysis Center community. As part of that, we are members of the National Council of ISACs, and it's interesting to listen to cross-sector sharing being presented at XchangeCore. We actually did that at the National Council of ISACs in real time, multiple times, where we, as National Council, are part of the same organization, financial services, oil and gas, electric, et cetera, et cetera. So it's been really good on a nationwide basis to be able to see what each sector is doing and how to share that information. The idea behind the The ISAC was that we needed to make sure we could get to the companies that needed the information quickly on cyber as well as physical events. And the exchange of data is really one of the things that we really have felt is key to making sure that the companies are prepared and can respond. One of the things that has been missing about every single time I see a plan or crisis plan is how do you handle the people? We talk a lot about systems and recovery and redundancy of operations to make sure survivability, but the one key member is constant and that they don't take care of the people like they should. And this is kind of why we work together. When I was with a large defense contractor before, we developed a capability that we're going to be talking about today that really helped us survive when Katrina hit. It helped us survive during the tornado outbreaks here in Huntsville in 2011. And that was, we knew what was going on with our employees, and not just here, but around the world, so that we could actually find out if somebody was in trouble and needed help, no matter where they were. The big key that's been missing in that component is the ability to geolocate, so us, the Emergency Operations Center, knew beforehand where they were. The only thing we could do is we knew where they lived. And from that, we could extrapolate data that they may have been impacted by either hurricane, tornado, or whatever. This is what we're trying to build now with spot-on response. We'll fill that gap. Next slide. What we've tried to do here is working with the Office of Infrastructure Protection to be able to get that critical infrastructure community the tools that they need. And this is part of this challenge is to build the state-of-the-art spot-on response that we can use to make sure that these companies now can not only find out where their people are, but if they need some help. And that's a huge gap in the past we've had. And another gap is tying the first responder community in with the local communities. We've talked a lot to the first responder community here in Huntsville, and they're really excited about this because that's one thing they've been missing. In addition to that, the first responder community itself has been missing this because I'm a former police officer, and I can tell you that when you have an incident such as happened in Dallas, you really don't have the ability to find out where your people are, and they don't know where each other are in a crisis like that. So to be able to do this is important to be able to do. And what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Chad Tillman. He can talk a little bit about where we are as far as trying to solve this problem and what we've been doing about it. Chad?
Thank you, Steve. For everybody, my name is Chad Tillman. I've been involved in emergency response, emergency management for about the past 10 years, and actually currently serving as Deputy Director of the local rescue squad. And as Steve said, part of the problem that we have is that ability to share information from the private sector into the first response community and vice versa. We found in the work we were doing earlier on that with other corporations that this accountability thing was very important, not only for the well-being and of the employees, but the well-being of the company. We had companies here in Huntsville that when the tornadoes come through, we were without power for about 6 days. And for a company to lose $2 million a day was pretty much the average for a percentage of our defense contractors here. And so being able to find out how their staff was, what kind of condition they were in, what needs they had, and then how quickly they could get them back to work became an absolutely critical thing. And as a result, we looked at it and said, what we need to have is a way where we can help the employee communicate directly with their points of contact, the important people they need to talk to within their company, and vice versa, to be able to have the company be able to send out information that was critical to either routes of ingress, egress, the ability to work from home, these type of things. And so the problem is that we had this inability to collect this data and cohesively put it together in a way that we could all use it. Next slide. All right. by being able to improve the well-being of these employees, we know that we can improve the well-being of the company. Now, the problem that we come into here is smaller companies do not have the resources available to be able to put a full-time emergency management staff on to be able to monitor 24/7 what is going on. We have those resources around us as to some extent in our local EMAs and local response community. But how do we get that data into the companies, and how do we provide it in a way that makes sense? And so what we want to do is we want to be able to make this company more resilient by being able to provide a watch center or an EOC center that supports companies that cannot have or do not have that financial capability to do on a 24/7. What we will be able to do, or what our intent is, to be able to provide them with field observations, with the things that we're finding out in a shared environment that's coming back from other companies and from the first response community, to be able to help these decision makers in the companies make safe decisions and good decisions on their business. And so this global situational awareness and collection of data is highly important to everybody that's involved. And being able to exchange that information amongst a large group is even more important, because as we're beginning to find out, not all threat information is weather related. We have man-made threats, we have chemical, biological threats, we have a number of different threats that can adversely affect the way that a company operates. And being able to find out how that company operates and being able to share that information back into the public sector to help them understand how things are happening in certain areas, residential, business parks, etc., is very important. And so we have come to the conclusion that one of the best ways to be able to do this is to be able to help people essentially become their own first responder and our own spotters, the old, as we call them, the boots on the ground, where we can exchange data bidirectionally between the companies, between the emergency operations centers, between the first responders, and the people who are actually in need. And this can be done best with mobile applications. Now that we have such a robust system of mobile devices, and the ability to be able to send two-way communications in emergencies, photographs, information like this is absolutely critical. I spent about 7 weeks in Katrina responding to Katrina, and it was very hard to go into an area where you did not know what was happening. And to have been able to have had photographs of what you were walking into, the hazards that you would be facing, would have been absolutely, I can't tell you how important that would have been. We are looking at being able to provide that, and through the information sharing through XchangeCore and through other resources and everything, we will be able to put data together that should be able to completely, well, not completely, but greatly enhance our first responders and our private enterprises to take care of their people. Next slide. This is just a chart that it's a little verbose here. I apologize for that. But what I wanted to show was what we can do by bringing this data in. We bring the data in, it's filtered, it's categorized, whether it's a weather, a fire, or earthquake, whatever the case may be. And then as you see, we have companies over here, and these companies have employees scattered out across the country. Well, as we are watching this happen globally, we will be able to notify a company of the employees that they have that are being affected by an event. Not only that, we'll be able to pull the data from that notification or from those employees. It's something as simple as an I'm okay, I'm not okay return message, to be able to pull that together and to be able to imply areas of damage, areas that are not damaged, and then be able to take that data that we're pulling in, and we are going to be using Spot On as our baseline product to be able to do this, to be able to pull this data and push it back into the EOCs and allow them to see where we are starting to see areas of damage. Another strong use of this is going to be in the community emergency response teams that FEMA has been training for years now. One of the problems that we have with CERT is that once people go through the CERT class, that unless they have a real robust training program, they tend to be a little bit idle. We have already sat down and worked with our local CERT association, our local EMA, and what we're going to be doing is training these CERT users how to use the spot-on application to effectively report things that are happening. This data will come back in, it will go into the EOCs, and it will also be pushed back out to the member companies that are using the system. Next slide. The result of this is going to be that we are going to greatly enhance our ability to share data, share information across the private and the public sector. We all know that there is data that we don't want to share, for business practice reasons, but there is a certain core set of information on things that are happening that benefit us all to share. We all benefit from it. We keep our communities robust by sharing this data. And so what we want to do is we want to get these companies that work within the DIB to look at this data, be able to share this, and then be able to use the data that's coming in from other members to be able to get their people back to work, to get their companies functional again, and to enhance their resiliency plans. And to be able to get this message and this data also back into the local response community, the local EMAs, and to allow them to better serve the community on the public side. And so having this sharing of data across is something that, quite frankly, we really have not had. We all talk about it. As a first responder, we've been talking about this for the 10 years I've been responding. And we are now seeing we have an opportunity to work with this. We have, here in Huntsville, we have a very active GIS community that is very, very much looking at this and saying, this is something that we want to do. So we're getting a lot of support from our local EMA and our local GIS community. And so the result that we hope, in summary, is that we're going to be able to pull this data together, to be able to share this information, and to be able to allow both the private community and the public sector to react more quickly based on the ground data that we are bringing back in from these events. Steve? As you can see here, I just want one more thing here. As we go on, you can see where we fit in this community. The XchangeCore, again, is bringing in the shared data from various other sources. And what we're doing is we're putting out the pertinent information that we need to the DIB community, also to the local government operations center. And in return, the aggregate data that's being pulled together and analyzed is being pushed back out. And other users within the XchangeCore will be able to get that where it is necessary and where needed, and also back into the private community. And this will be distributed on threat awareness alerts, warnings, all sorts of different ways that we'll be able to do this. And the nice thing about it is receiving these photos and ground verification data back into the system is just going to really help with our ability to recover from these things. The other nice thing about it is we're going to be able to containerize information. For example, pre-fire planning. We can help the private industry build their pre-fire plans in direct relationship and direct coordination with their fire departments. These plans can be stored. POCs can be loaded into the system where when a fire department pulls up to an active fire, all they have to do is pull the data up. They know who is in charge, who is their POC, and where keys, access codes, etc. are kept to be able to allow them to better fight this fire and these events. So all the way around, this sharing of data is going to improve. And as far as the company, we come back to that we are our own first responder. It allows the companies to help train their employees to be more aware of things that are going on, to see these things that are going on, and help us train them in a way to provide better data back in to the response community.
And one thing too, Chad, is the themselves on the ground gives you ground truth of what's going on. So one of the things we're lacking is the ability as a emergency operations center to get that ground truth from, as Chad described them earlier, the ground pounders down there, because that's the biggest gap that we have. And if we empower the DIV employees to do this, now we're going to be able to get information from them. In addition to that, they can help each other out. One of the things we found that's interesting is that sometimes when things happen, they may have other company co-workers within their neighborhood we can't get a hold of. And all of a sudden, if we see that there's a whole area of red because they reported they've had troubles, and we can't get a hold of 2 or 3 other people in that area, there's a good probability that they have problems. And but conversely, if everybody in that area is reporting that it's okay, then we have some assurance that they probably are doing okay, doing just about every kind of disaster. Next slide, Jim. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead, Chad.
This is just a little list here, some of the points that we've talked about, and some of the things that we can provide, the benefits to the local EMA. And like I say, we have sat down and our EMA is very active in helping us put this together. The thing that they're liking about it is it gives them a conduit to better information, that ground truth that Steve was just talking about. And on the company side, it gives us a better understanding of what the EMA is going to do. It helps us train our people a little bit better, and it helps us communicate with our people in business continuity and resiliency needs. Getting everybody back to work as soon as possible is not necessarily just a thing for the company, because those people who are out of work are out of a paycheck when they're out of work. So getting everybody back to work as soon as we can helps everybody involved. And as far as future benefits, once this thing is secured and starts to grow, the amount of data that we're going to be able to filter and bring in is going to be, it's going to just grow in our ability to accurately analyze the data that's coming in and be able to push it back out. And in particular, when we get into areas of the critical infrastructure sectors where we have to have these highly skilled, these mission critical people back on job as soon as we can, or protect them as best we can. The ability to geolocate them, to assess their standing situation, and to be help them is something that this is a goal that we have, and we have seen its need, and have seen through some of our efforts earlier how well it does help. And so all sectors are going to benefit from this. As we say, this is something we're putting together for the DIV right now, but it is definitely going to go out to everybody that wants to use and apply these tools.
Yeah, one of the things, too, in the cross-sector that you mentioned, which is so true, is that in the community, every single sector within that community is dependent upon each other. So when it impacts the community, it's very important to be able to pull in not just the defense industrial base, but also all the companies that support each other, because we have dependencies on electric, water, gas, you name it. So being able to pull these things together within the community, that's why it's important to take a community regional-based approach to what we're doing. Jeff, next slide.
And let me just take this as an opportunity to thank Steve and Chad. Great presentation. This is going to be a fun project. We're looking forward to working with you and all the improvements that we'll be making to XchangeCore and pushing the results of information that passes XchangeCore right into the palm of the hand of many, many people in the critical defense industrial base. But then, as you said, every sector, which will be an appropriate use and capability that we'll be able to offer them. So thank you very much, gentlemen.
Welcome.
And let's move over to Ann Brzezinski, who is the recipient of a grant from the National Earthquake Hazard Reduction Program, and will be applying that to XchangeCore geospatial extensions. So Ann, welcome and thank you.
Okay, thanks Jim and everybody. So I'm Ann Brzezinski. I'm with the California Geological Survey, and one of my other duties as required is to coordinate the California Earthquake Clearinghouse when there are major earthquakes in California. And we've been around since 1971, and the organization is intended to provide a place to coordinate people, following damaging earthquakes. It's a place for engineers, geologists, seismologists, sociologists, economists, and other professionals that are interested in understanding the impacts of an earthquake to congregate and exchange that information about ground failure, structural damage, social and financial impacts, and become part of the larger organization. And since 2012, the Clearinghouse has been using XchangeCore web service data orchestration in both state and national earthquake-themed exercises and 2 real California earthquakes to share field observations among all those different types of people that I described, both in the field and back in the EOCs. And a critical part of the Clearinghouse mission is that all of our members are self-directed. The Clearinghouse doesn't direct any of our members about how to collect and analyze the data. They should be doing, they all have their own jobs and roles and responsibilities, but we want to be able to share that information. So XchangeCore has been a real important asset to us to facilitate that exchange of data and all the different types of data exchange that you heard in Paula and the other 2 gentlemen speaking about. It's been a way of sharing data in standardized formats among all these different organizations without dictating to any organization to use a specific end-user software application. So the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, NEHRP, which is part of FEMA, in 2015 and we just found out in 2016, the Clearinghouse was able to secure some funding, and that's coming to us through our partners at the Earthquake Engineering Research Institute. And we're using the funding to expand and improve the Clearinghouse XchangeCore. And specifically, the grants are going to be, or this year's grant is responding to our gaps that we identified in our after-action reports from the 2014 South Napa earthquake, and then the 2015 multi-exercise, which was the national level exercise. It was an earthquake-themed exercise in Southern California. And so in those events and exercise, the Clearinghouse XchangeCore provided information to our spot-on response that we make available to Clearinghouse members, and it's used by our members to conduct field investigations and monitor situational awareness, as well as share information among the various partners. So we have been working really closely with a number of teams at NASA, and we're sharing information with the National Guard, who use Google Earth. We have a USGS field notes, which is used by scientists to collect scientific information, and then the analysts who take all that information and use applications like ArcGIS Online. So the 2 specific XchangeCore improvements that we're going to be focusing on are XchangeCore outputs of Esri JSON and GeoJSON, and this requirement is to allow ArcGIS Online feature layers to be output by XchangeCore. And the specific capabilities of the layers are output from XchangeCore is GeoJSON formatted data, and optional output from XchangeCore could be Esri JSON formatted data if necessary for using it, bringing it into ArcGIS Online. And then the data will be queried from existing XchangeCore feed query format. So it makes the data more accessible and more useful for people doing analysis. And then the other improvement is to the actual XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online to be able to work more effectively with line and polygon data. So this requirement is to incorporate identification of lines and polygons using the connector and processing of line and polygon ArcGIS Online data records for submission to XchangeCore. And the additional capabilities to the connector would be using point area and buffer features of the XchangeCore connector for ArcGIS Online for users to identify and select desired line segments and polygons. and then package those line segments and polygons in the same method currently used for submission as OGC Map Context Standard document to XchangeCore. And the real benefit of this is that you heard earlier about the different missions of different, the DIBS community and emergency response. And in order, we've got all this information, but ultimately what we're trying to do is get that information into the hands of skilled analysts who can pull specific data that they're interested in from that range of information and create their own specific decision support products. So we've been working, for instance, one of our really valuable partners is City of Walnut Creek, and Phil Balin, who's been able to pull information. He has critical population data from the city that he can add to USGS shape map information and information from Clearinghouse partners about actual earthquake impacts in the field, and he can pull in utility information, and then he can make some custom decision support products for his, the City of Walnut Creek decision makers. And so the idea is that we want to be able to pull in different types of data sets and different formats to be able to make those different types of products. And we've benefited a lot from the XchangeCore and open source community. And as I always point out, not only does the Clearinghouse not receive any funding, it's entirely cooperative, we don't even have a bank account. So any funding we get, we have to be really strategic about how we apply it. And when we're lucky enough to get, anything at all, we've gotten a lot of value out of XchangeCore over the last 5 years, and we're really pleased to finally be able to contribute something back to the community. And it's not a lot of funding at all, but the return is going to be significant because those improvements I just described will support, and have a broad positive impact. It's not just improving our XchangeCore, but every application connected to our XchangeCore, and that's huge. That's a lot of different applications. And it's not just for earthquake response, but the entire emergency management enterprise. So, we're looking forward to debuting all these different improvements in our upcoming exercises and workshops, and we invite anybody who's interested to please feel free to participate and help us grow our capabilities further. So that's our little update.
Thank you very much, Ann. I very much appreciate that, and all the participation that the Clearinghouse has had since 2012. Hard to believe that it's pushing 5 years now. But you guys have done a huge amount with XchangeCore and are our poster children in most cases. So thank you very much for this presentation and all your hard work.
Thanks.
So those are our 3 different ways that XchangeCore is going to be improved in the near future by each of these programs. Thank you, everybody, and have a good couple weeks. Bye now.